The first thing Aaron Greer did when I walked into that private dining room was choke on his water. I stopped the story there, at the start of all this, and made you wait. You've earned the rest. You know how I got here now. 2 years of waiting. A year of building. A house with my name on it that he'll never see. A book with his life in it that he doesn't know exists. And a folder that does the one thing he never managed, which is tell the truth in order. So you know everything I knew when I stepped through that door. He didn't know any of it. Let me walk you in.
Before this gets any uglier, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, and if stories about karma, betrayal, love, and people finally getting what they ordered move you, go ahead and like the video. Now let's get back to the mess.
Cordova sits up in Buckhead, on a quiet block where the valet doesn't run, because the people who eat there are never in a hurry. A host walked me back toward the private room himself, the way they do when discretion is part of the check. I knew the kind of room waiting at the end of that hallway, because years ago I'd designed one almost exactly like it, for the previous owner who wanted a place where the wrong word could be said out loud and never make it to the street. No windows. Warm light, low, gold pushed up against the walls so it never reached the middle of the table. People relax in rooms like that. They forget they can be watched. I dressed for that light on purpose, because I always do. The black covered everything it needed to. I hadn't come to be looked at. The print did the rest of the work, all that controlled chaos moving against my legs as I walked, every line of it going exactly where it had decided to go. And the hat brim sat low enough that anyone in that room would have to wait for me to lift my chin before they got my whole face. The bag rode my shoulder, light as anything that costs that much, looking like the most innocent object in the building. It was carrying the rest of a man's life. I could hear him through the door before the host opened it. That smooth, reasonable voice, the one from the podcast, the one a few thousand men paid to be talked at by. I just want us to be fair to each other, Aaron was saying. That's all I've ever wanted. Fair, fair, from him. I almost laughed before I was even in the room. The host glanced at me, then at the reservation in his hand, which did not have my name on it. I gave him the smile I save for contractors who hang a door slightly off plumb and assume I won't notice. They're expecting me, I said. It wasn't technically a lie. Somewhere underneath 2 years of being careful, I think Aaron Greer had always been expecting me. He just thought he'd see me coming. The host opened the door. He saw me, and the water went down wrong. Very wrong for a man who'd spent 3 years lying to everyone else in the room. Aaron coughed into his fist hard, then again. The glass came down too hard, knocking his fork off the plate, and he reached for the napkin but missed it on his first reach. The choke I promised you at the very beginning. Paid in full, right on schedule. His wife didn't move like that. Kalina finished the bite she was working on, set her fork down without a sound, and looked at me with the patience of someone who'd been half expecting the door to open all along. She took a slow sip of her own water. She put the glass back exactly inside the ring it had already left on the cloth, lined it up so it sat in its own print, and turned the stem a 1/4 inch until it suited her. Aaron was still coughing. That was how I knew which one of them to watch. Aaron made noise. Kalina made a ring on a tablecloth and set her glass back in it. Sable. Aaron got my name out wet around the napkin. He tried again, lower, reaching for the reasonable voice and not quite finding it. What are you doing here? How did you even... This is a private room, you can't just... Look at you, I said, remembering names under pressure. I came the rest of the way in. Did not hurry. I had rehearsed not hurrying. Sable. He was half out of his chair, one hand flat on the table. I don't know what you think this is, but you need to go, right now. I wasn't looking at him. I set the bag down on the cloth beside Kalina, careful, the way you set down something you've carried a long way, and I kept my eyes on her. I'm not staying, I said. I just came to pay for lunch. I took a beat. For our wife, since she's been covering everything anyway. That word, our. I felt it go through the room. Kalina, baby. Aaron's hand shot toward the bag. Don't, she said without looking at him. Two of her fingers got there first. She slid it to her far side, the side he'd have to stand all the way up to reach, and she did it without looking at his hand, the way you move a salt shaker that's drifted too close to the edge. This woman is not well, he said to her, fast now. She's a contractor I hired one time. She got attached. She's bitter. I'm an interior designer and a writer, I said. If I wanted attention, I'd have staged this better. Kalina still hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't needed to once. Let her finish. And Aaron sat down. There's a note on top, I told her. It's for you. Read it when you're alone. Aaron started to say something. Kalina didn't look at him, and he stopped. Under it there's a book. I wrote it. Comes out in the spring. I shrugged. Nobody has to read that one. I let a second or two go by. And at the bottom, there's an envelope. I looked at Aaron for the first time since I'd walked in. That one's his in a way. It's everything he spent 3 years pretending he wasn't doing. He doesn't get to keep it, but it was always going to come back to him. I won't make you wait the way I made them wait. I'd rewritten that first line a dozen times before I got it cold enough, and I knew it by heart, so I'll tell you what she'd find folded on top. In my own hand, addressed to a woman I had wronged and had no intention of starting to lie to now. Kalina, this is not my apology. I'm not going to insult you by pretending I became a good woman the second the situation stopped paying me. I looked out for myself first. I always have. You don't know me, but you should know that about me before you decide what any of this is worth. Here is what you do not have to take on faith. Aaron used your money, your accounts, your name, and your quiet to build a whole life with me that he never had the spine to claim in daylight. Inside this envelope are the transfers, the hotels, the gifts, the dates, and the records, every dollar of yours he spent keeping me comfortable, pretty, and patient. You don't owe me forgiveness. I'm not asking for it, but I believe in a woman having the right paperwork. Bury him clean. Sable Monroe. No fake sisterhood. No sudden sainthood. I did not write that I was sorry, because I have a rule about not lying in writing. And I've always believed the cruelest thing you can do to a man like Aaron isn't to scream at him. It's to hand the truth to the one person who can actually use it, and let her decide when. I did not wait to watch her open it. You don't stand around admiring a fire after you've struck the match. The point is the fire, not your face lit up next to it. It was nice to meet you, Kalina, I said, and I meant it, which surprised me a little. She looked at me for a long second. Whatever was in that look, it was not warmth, and I would never insult her by calling it that. It was closer to recognition. One person who keeps her own counsel, taking the measure of another. Thank you for bringing it, she said. That was all. Not thank you for being honest, because I hadn't been. Not for years. Not thank you for setting her free, because she'd built her own door long before I came along. The clause was hers, drawn up airtight by people she paid well to think ahead. The quiet was hers too. All I'd done was bring the key. She thanked me for the delivery, for the paperwork. I respected the hell out of her for knowing the difference. I walked out of the room and stopped at the front, where a young man in a good jacket stood behind a podium pretending he hadn't heard anything, because that is the job. The table in the private room, I said, and handed him my card. The real one with the book money, and 3 years of my own untouched earnings sitting behind it. I've got their lunch. He ran it. $1,100 and change, because Aaron had ordered the second most expensive wine, never the most expensive, which was Aaron in a nutshell, performing restraint while reaching for the bottle. I tipped well. I've always tipped well, even when I shouldn't have been able to afford to. Especially then. You learn fast that the people who tip badly aren't saving money. They're telling you exactly who they'll be the day they have some. The server asked, the way they're trained to, whether everything had been all right. Not yet, I said, but it's about to be. Aaron did not come after me. I knew he wouldn't. Chasing me down the sidewalk would have meant leaving Kalina alone in a windowless room with a cream bag full of his life, and on some animal level, even he understood that the bag was the danger now, not the woman who'd carried it. So he stayed. He picked the wrong thing to protect one last time, which was, after all, the only consistent thing about him. I stepped out into Buckhead, into the actual daylight, the kind with no dimmer on it, and I did not feel clean. I want to be honest all the way to the end. I felt done, which is a different thing and a better one. There was nothing left to do in Atlanta. I'd timed it so there wouldn't be. While Aaron was choking on his water in that gold little room, 4 men I'd hired were walking through my apartment, wrapping the good furniture he'd bought in moving blankets, taping up a life I was finished living. By the time he got my name out wet around a napkin, half of it was already in a truck pointed south. I didn't go home to pack. I went home to watch other people finish, sign for it, and lock a door behind me for the last time. Savannah by nightfall. The lunch hadn't been the end of anything. It was the last errand before I left. The phone started before I reached the Uber. What did you do? Sable. What did you put in that bag? Answer me right now. You have no idea what you just started. You're going to regret this. When the text didn't land, he called. I didn't pick up, so he did the next best thing. He started leaving the kind of evidence no lawyer would ever have let him leave on purpose. The first voicemail was the podcast voice, the reasonable one, the one he reached for when he wanted to sound like the calmest man in the room. Hey, it's me. I think there's been a huge misunderstanding, and I think if you just call me back, we can fix this before it becomes a thing. Okay? Just call me. The second one, 20 minutes later, had lost the voice entirely. Sable, I'm serious. Whatever you think you saw, whatever you think you have, you need to delete it. All of it. You don't know what you're playing with. These are not people you play with. By the third, he wasn't performing for anyone. You did this to hurt me. That's all this is. You couldn't have me, so you torched my whole life, and I hope it was worth it, because I promise you it will not be. I know people. I will make sure everybody knows exactly what kind of woman you are. I sat in the back of the car and listened to all 3. And somewhere in the third one, I started to smile, because I'd spent 2 years waiting for that man to tell me how he really felt, and he'd finally done it the week it could no longer touch me. Then I did the thing I'd been doing for a year without him ever once noticing. I screenshotted every text, I saved every voicemail, downloaded, backed up, labeled by time, and I kept going. A man threatening you in writing, and then on the record, in his own voice, minutes after you've handed his wife a stack of evidence, is not a frightening thing. It's a generous one. It's bonus content. He was, right to the last, a man who could not stop creating a record of himself, and could not imagine that anyone was keeping it. I turned the phone face down on the seat and let it buzz the whole way to the apartment like something trapped in a wall. I had a house 3 hours south with my name on the deed and nobody else's. I had a book on the way. And I had nothing left to say to Aaron Greer that a folder couldn't say better. I expected lawyers. I didn't expect them to be so quiet about it. The email came 11 days after the lunch. On an afternoon, I was sitting on the floor of my own front room in Savannah with paint decks fanned out around me, arguing pleasantly with a contractor named Earl about whether the original heart pine could be saved. Earl thought it couldn't. Earl was wrong, and I was enjoying showing him why. Imani had driven over after closing her office, still in her work clothes, and was eating my lunch out of my refrigerator and offering opinions about a kitchen that was none of her business. My phone lit up on the floorboards. One line of a subject I didn't recognize from a firm I did. I read it once and went still enough that Imani noticed. "What?" she said. I handed her the phone instead of answering. She wiped her fingers on a paper towel, took it, and read it the way she reads everything, fast, with no expression she didn't choose to have. "Ms. Monroe, receipt of the materials is acknowledged. Please preserve all originals and refrain from discussing this matter publicly. Counsel for Kalina Greer." Huh. She read it again. Then she set the phone face up on the floor between us like it was a card she was laying down. "You know what this is, right? A thank you note with no thank you in it." "It's better than that." She leaned back on her hands. "There's no thank you because a thank you would be a feeling, and feelings end up in discovery. There's no anger because anger means she was surprised, and that woman has not been surprised since the day she signed that postnup. This is a receipt, Sable, a clean one. She's telling you she got it, she's telling you to keep your mouth shut, and she's telling you to protect the originals, which means she's going to use them. Which means she's already using them." Imani picked the phone back up and read the last line out loud, slow. "Preserve all originals. That's not a request. That's a woman putting a hand on your shoulder and saying, 'Don't you dare lose my evidence before I'm done with it.'" She handed it back. "She likes you, by the way. As much as a woman like that likes anybody, she had to find out about this way. You don't tell someone to preserve originals if you think they're a liability. You tell them that when you've decided they're useful." I looked at the email again. No thank you, no outrage, no curiosity about who I was or why I'd done it. Kalina Greer was not going to spend a single sentence on my motives, because my motives were not the asset. The folder was the asset, and now the folder had a custodian she trusted enough to instruct. "So what do I do?" I said. Imani went back to my refrigerator like the matter was settled, because for her it was. "You do exactly what it says. You preserve all originals. You say nothing." She found the good cheese I'd been hiding. "And you let the woman with the $1 billion and the airtight clause handle the part you already did your half of." I preserved all originals. I am, if nothing else, a woman who keeps her files. The book came out in the spring, exactly 4 months after the lunch, exactly when Renata Long had said it would, which is the only promise anyone made me in this whole story that landed on the day it was supposed to. It started slow, the way these things do. A few trade reviews, a handful of strangers posting that confessional cover and asking who the author was, because nobody could quite place the name. For about 2 weeks it sold the way a quiet debut sells, a few hundred copies, a polite trickle, enough to make Renata say, "Give it time," in the voice agents use when they're not sure there's time to give. Then a woman with a reading account and a couple 100,000 followers made a video. I have watched it more times than I will admit. She's in her car, no makeup, holding my book up to the camera with a face like she's reporting a crime. "I need to talk about this book," she says, "because I have not slept, and I need somebody to tell me it's not real." She reads one passage out loud, the one where the narrator realizes the man she's been waiting on has been keeping her comfortable instead of keeping her, and her voice cracks on it a little. And that crack is the thing that did it. By morning, the video had 1 million views. By the weekend, it had 4. The comments under it were their own weather system. "This is fiction? In this economy?" No notes. I don't believe her the way she wrote him, producing these big love and loyalty anthems while he's keeping her on a string. That's not made up. That's somebody's actual life girl said, "Promises bounce, Zelle clears." And I had to put my phone down because who hurt this author? Who is he? Where is he? Somebody else made a video about her video. Then a man made an angry one about both, defending a husband no one had named, which is the single most useful thing anyone did for my sales all spring because 40,000 people showed up to find out who he was so mad on behalf of. Inside 3 weeks, the thing had legs I never gave it. Scalding, they called it. Unsparing. One reviewer called the narrator a woman who refuses to lie about her own appetite, and I cut that line out and kept it where I used to keep the timeline. And then the question started, the way I always knew it would. Is it real? Is it about somebody? Did this happen to you? I had a line, and I used it every time, light and final. It's fiction, inspired by every woman who got tired of being an unpaid character in some man's story. People laughed. They thought I was being clever. I was being clever. I was also being careful, because the same sentence that sounded like a wink was a wall I'd built on purpose, the wall that let everyone believe the truth while keeping me from ever once saying it. That is the whole trick, if you want it. You don't deny the rumor and you don't confirm it. You let the silence do the work, the way Kalina taught me during lunch without ever meaning to. I went on podcasts that weren't Aaron's and called it fiction. I sat in bookstores and called it fiction. It was, technically, fiction, the way a lie with good posture is technically standing up straight. The numbers were the part that didn't feel real because they were the realest thing that had happened to me in years. The book went back to print twice in the first month, then a third time. It wasn't Get a Yacht Money, and anybody who tells you a debut novel is Get a Yacht Money is selling a course. It was something better and quieter than that. It was never going back money. It was the kind of money that meant my own design work could become a thing I did because I wanted to, not because the lights needed paying. Between the book and 3 years of earnings nobody had ever let me spend, I sat in my finished house in Savannah and did the math one night and realized, for the first time in my adult life, that I was not afraid of any month that was coming. I was winning and exposed at the same time, and I had made my peace with both. The divorce had been moving the whole time, quietly, in rooms I was not in. The bag did that, not the book. People get those two confused, and I let them, but I want you to have it straight. The receipts ended the marriage. The book just made sure the whole city watched it happen. By the time the novel was everywhere, the Greer divorce had stopped being a private matter and turned into a sport. Somebody leaked the shape of it, a wellness mogul, a husband, an infidelity clause, a settlement number that kept shrinking. And then the internet did the thing it does best, which is take two stories that were never officially the same story, lay them side by side, and refuse to be talked out of the resemblance. His old clips resurfaced first. They always do. Some accounts stitch 6 minutes of Aaron Greer telling men to protect their households, to lead with integrity, to choose their wives daily, and cut it against a filing that alleged he'd spent the household's money on another woman for 3 years. A legacy man doesn't keep a woman comfortable, so she stays quiet. He'd said that, into a camera, in a room I designed, and now it ran under a headline about a man who'd done exactly that. That was the part I could watch from a distance and enjoy. The next part came for me, because the book had landed in the same season as the leak, and the book was about a rich wife, a charming hollow husband, and the other woman who finally stopped waiting, and the timing was too clean for anybody to leave alone. A relationship blogger with a big following posted a side-by-side, my plot beats in one column, the rumored divorce details in the other, and titled it, Is the Book of the Year a Confession? It did numbers. Of course it did. I'd have clicked it too. After that, the quiet I'd built started getting loud. My publicist's inbox went from polite to feral. 2 morning shows wanted me. A podcast that had never returned Renata's calls suddenly wanted 90 minutes and called it Your Moment. A reporter I'd never spoken to emailed asking me, point blank, to confirm or deny that the novel was based on the Greer marriage, and when I didn't answer, she emailed again, and then a third time, each one a little less polite, because nothing offends a certain kind of person like a woman who won't take the bait that would ruin her. Someone found a wedding I'd designed years back and posted the listing, trying to place me in the same rooms as Kalina. Someone else dug up that I'd done a studio build for a fitness creator and got close enough that I felt the floor tilt for about an hour. None of it connected. It couldn't, because I'd spent 3 years making sure there was nothing to connect. Every folder boring, every receipt his, my name on a deed 3 hours away and nowhere near his name at all. But for the first time since I'd walked out of Cordova, I understood that I had built something I could no longer fully steer. The book was out in the world, doing its own talking now, and the only thing keeping me safe was the one discipline Aaron never had. I said nothing. I confirmed nothing. I let them circle. I watched all of it from a fully renovated house in Savannah, with the windows open and the marsh going gold outside them, and I did not post a word. I didn't have to. Aaron had spent years handing strangers the gun and calling it wisdom, and now a few 100,000 of them were aiming it back at him for free. I just sat still in the one place nobody thought to look and let them. He did not collapse all at once. He deflated, which is slower and worse to watch, and exactly what he deserved. The sponsors went first, the way sponsors do, quietly, citing scheduling. The masculinity conference that had booked him as a keynote announced a lineup change. His comment sections, which used to be men calling him king, filled up instead with men who felt personally lied to, which is its own specific fury, the fury of someone who bought the discipline and is now embarrassed he believed in it. About a month in, he tried to take the narrative back the only way he knew how. He went back on the mic. I watched the episode the night it dropped, from my couch in Savannah, because I am not going to pretend I had the restraint to skip it. He titled it Standing in My Truth, which told you everything before he said a word. New lighting, same peeling backdrop, that fake book wall sticker curling at the corner where the whole internet had already caught it. He sat forward, hands folded, doing sincere. "I've been quiet," he said. "And quiet isn't my nature, but I want to talk to the men who've been riding with me, because you deserve the truth from me directly." Then he didn't give them any. "There's a narrative out there," he said, "and narratives are easy. Filings taken out of context, a book somebody wrote to profit off pain. All I'd ask is that you remember there are two sides to every story." He was right about that. Unfortunately for Aaron, I had screenshots of both. The comments were already moving faster than he was talking. The internet, which is cruel and frequently correct, had shown up to work, and it had split into two crowds without meaning to. One was working off the divorce, which had cracked open far enough that people could see the shape of it, an infidelity claim, marital money spent on a woman, a number that kept shrinking. That crowd wasn't guessing, they were reading. The bookshelf is a sticker, bro. The filing literally says marital funds. That's not a narrative, that's an exhibit. Not him preaching loyalty from the same studio he ran it out of. Remember when this man told me to fix my marriage? The other crowd was working off the book, and that crowd could only guess because guessing was all I'd ever left them. Okay, tell me that new novel isn't about the Greer divorce. Tell me. The author keeps calling it fiction, ma'am. We can read IDK if it's about them specifically, but it's about somebody and that man is sweating. He kept talking, and that was the mistake, because the longer he went, the more the old language came out of him on reflex, the discipline, the legacy, the leadership, the owning your house. He sat in front of a sticker of books he'd never read and told a few thousand men to hold themselves to a higher standard, in the same calm voice he'd once used to tell a woman in his comments to learn to trust her husband again. You could feel the room hearing it differently now. The words hadn't changed. we had. I'm not going to address specifics, he said near the end, out of respect for my family. His family. The respect arrived about 3 years late and was addressed to the wrong room. Here is the line nobody in either crowd could actually cross, and it was the line I'd built on purpose. The divorce told them what Aaron had done, because his wife's attorneys put it in a filing with his name on it and never once put mine. The book told them how it felt, because I'd written it that way. But no document linked the two, and no honest person could swear the novel wasn't entirely about 3 other people. People assumed. People are usually right when they assume, which is a different thing from being able to prove it, and the difference was exactly wide enough for me to walk through. I'd measured it myself. So Aaron raged at a shape he wasn't allowed to name. He couldn't point at me without confirming the affair he was denying in a courtroom, and he couldn't point at the book without sending the whole hungry internet to buy another 50,000 copies of it. That is the most helpless a loud man can be, swinging at something he isn't permitted to call by its name. The brand he'd built on telling other men to lead came apart on the one fact he could never spin. He had not led anything, least of all himself. He'd hidden and called it strategy and timing and protecting everybody involved, and every bill for all of it came due in the same week. The package came in the fall to the Savannah address, which I had given to almost no one. It was the bag. My cream bag, the one I'd set on the table at Cordova and walked away from, returned to me clean and smelling faintly of a perfume that was not mine. There was no note. Kalina Greer was never going to put anything in writing that she didn't have to, and she certainly wasn't going to spend ink on me. Inside, the only thing in it was a single folded clipping. A short piece from a business page, the kind that runs settlements as numbers, because the people who read it think in numbers. Aaron Greer, it said, would receive a one-time sum in the dissolution of his marriage to Kalina Greer, founder of Greer House and Haven, an estate valued north of $1 billion. The number was $22,850,000. I sat down on the floor, and I did the math I'd been carrying for over a year, just to feel it land. He'd dreamed of half. 500 million in his head, on my couch, drunk and certain. The clause had capped him at 3% of the estate, a little over 31 million, an insult with a dollar sign attached. And then her attorneys had traced every dollar of marital money he'd spent on me, the apartment, the trips, the gifts, the soft regular deposits, the $250,000 he wired for a house with a pool that never existed, and subtracted all of it, down to the penny. $8,650,000 of it, gone. Spent keeping me quiet, pretty, and patient, and billed straight back to him. He was not poor, I want to be fair, because nobody else in this story will be. 22 million is more than I thought I would earn in a lifetime of making other people's rooms beautiful. But it was not the empire, and it was not half. And to a man who measured his whole worth against his wife's, it was the exact size of the thing he'd always feared he was. Kalina Greer did not forgive me. She sent me an empty bag and a number and not one word, and that was the most honest message anyone sent anyone in the whole affair. She didn't have to forgive me. Forgiveness is personal. Paperwork is business. I kept the clipping. I did not keep the perfume. It was late fall, and the book was on its fourth printing. I was living in the house with the good bones, like I told you, the bad paint stripped off by my own hands, in a city Aaron Greer has no reason to ever visit. 3 blocks from a law office with my best friend's name on the door, and lately, from a real estate agent named Marcus, who has stopped pretending he stops by for professional reasons. I was, for the first time I could remember, just plainly glad to be where I was. I do signings now, small ones, the good kind, in stores that smell like paper and money. I design the table myself every time. Warm light, low, gold pushed against the wall so it never quite reaches the middle, where I sit signing my pen name over and over until it stops being a name and turns into a thing other people feel they own a piece of. A woman asked me at my signing in Augusta the question they always circle: does she regret it? The woman in the book. She said it a little shyly. By the end, do you think she regrets any of it? I thought about Aaron, the studio I built him, the grapes, the 2 years and the year after, the folder named Miscellaneous, the lunch. She doesn't have it in her, I said. Regret is for people who thought they were better than their choices. She always knew exactly who she was. She just got better, over time, at pricing the damage. The woman laughed, a little nervously, and asked if there'd be a sequel. I told her there might be. She took her book and went off happy, which is the whole job. And then the next person in line set her copy down in front of me, and I looked up, stunned that it was Kalina Greer. She'd waited in the line. That was the first thing that undid me. A woman worth $1 billion standing between a college girl and a man buying a gift for his wife, holding my book like anyone else. But she had one of the first copies, the one that I'd placed in the bag before the lunch. She was not in disguise and didn't need one. People don't expect a woman like her to be standing in line for signing, so nobody saw her but me. "Would you sign it?" she said. I signed it. My hand was steadier than I expected. I slid it back across the table, and she didn't pick it up right away. She left it there and looked at me with that same expression from the restaurant, the one that wasn't warmth and was never going to be. Kalina asked me the only question in the world I didn't have a rehearsed answer for. "The woman in your book," she said. "The one who waited." She tilted her head slightly. When she finally added it up, did she think the years were worth what she got out of him? Or had she figured out by then that she was never the love story? She was just the side effect of one. The room kept moving around us. Nobody knew the whole marriage was being settled over a hardcover in a few heartbeats at a mid-level bookstore. "She didn't get him," I said. "That was never the prize. He was the cost." I let that sit. And no, she wasn't the love story, and she stopped wanting to be. By the end, I guess, she understood what she'd actually been the whole time. Not the wife, not the future, not even the affair, really. Just the side effect of a man who wanted everything and was willing to spend everyone else's life to keep it. Something moved behind Kalina's eyes. Not forgiveness. We were never going to be friends, and neither of us had ever pretended otherwise. It was the look one builder gives another at a final walkthrough, two people standing in a room that turned out exactly the way it was supposed to. "Good title," she said. She picked up the book. She did not say thank you or say goodbye, because she had already paid me everything she was ever going to pay me, which was the truth, handed back across a table the same way I'd handed it to her. Then she was gone, out into a fall afternoon worth $1 billion, and I turned to the next person in line, a girl of maybe 19 with the cover pressed to her chest like a secret. "Did that really happen to you?" she whispered. "It's fiction," I said, and signed her book. My life was designed more complicated than that, I said with a wink. Aaron Greer thought he had a wife, a mistress, and a future payout. What he really had was a woman who built the empire, a woman who kept the receipts, and a lunch reservation he should have canceled. I signed the last book. I turned off the lights myself, the way I always do, because I am the only one who knows exactly how I want the room to look when it's empty. Then I went home, and I didn't feel sorry or saved. I felt like the author, which in the end was the only thing I ever actually wanted to be.
And there it is, dreadfuls. The table has been cleared, the bill has been paid, and Aaron Greer finally learned that some women do not need to scream to ruin you. Kalina built the empire, Sable kept the receipts, and Aaron, Aaron spent 3 years confusing attention with loyalty and silence with safety. He thought he was walking away with $500 million and a clean story. Instead, he left with a smaller check, a public scandal, a ruined brand, and the kind of humiliation money cannot moisturize. Now let's be clear, Sable Monroe was not innocent. She was not the victim in white. She knew the man was married. She took the gifts and cashed the transfers. She sat in the apartment, ate the grapes, wore the clothes, and let herself believe that being wanted meant being chosen. But that is what makes this story so dreadful, darling. Nobody at that table was clean. Kalina had the empire that had come before her marriage. Aaron had the ego, Sable had the appetite, and in the end, the only thing stronger than love, lust, or lies was paperwork. So if this story had you gasping, judging, laughing, side-eyeing, and checking your own receipts, go ahead and hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me who you think really won. Was it Kalina, who walked away with her empire intact? Was it Sable, who turned her shame into a bestseller and became the author of her own life? Or was everybody just paying the side effects of loving a man who thought he was the prize? Share this with somebody who loves a messy story with expensive consequences. And subscribe to Sin Dreadful, because around here the secrets are dressed well, the women are complicated, and the men usually learn too late that the quietest person in the room heard everything. Tap that bell, Dreadfuls, because there is always another table, and you never know who is coming to dinner.
That was only a glimpse, Dreadfuls. Follow Sin Dreadful for the full story and every dreadful little turn. Or don't. The dread continues either way.